all kind of expected this, right? With the invention of Game Pass, bringing all these amazing titles onto one platform as a subscription service, that you would think it's going to eat into sales in some kind of capacity, but we never really know how much. But actually, it was just revealed that Xbox games in Game Pass can lose up to 80% of premium sales as claimed. This comes from business journalist Christopher Dring. And there's one key word that he says when it comes to making this claim that I think is much more important than just saying like, I believe or I think. Because he says, anecdotally, games are in Game Pass can expect to lose around 80% of expected premium sales on Xbox. Now the key word I'm saying here is anecdotally. That's very different than like, I believe or I think. That's saying that like he has information that he knows of at least one game that did experience that type of loss, which is kind of crazy. But you also have to imagine that kind of number probably affects much more of the smaller type of game, right? Like the AA type of game or something like that. Because like these big name titles, like people are gonna buy them or play them no matter what. But you have to think that still Game Pass has to eat into that a little bit. And he does mention that within this article, saying that's the figure that gets thrown around. It's less if it's a big mainstream release, but generally look at how low Hellblade 2 charted, or where Indiana Jones came in, or even Starfield. Like Game Pass clearly hurts sales of those titles. But of course they make it up in Game Pass subscriptions, right? Most people don't really buy a whole lot of games. It says right here specifically grabbing some information from some of these news articles saying between 5 to 10 games per year is what an average gamer would buy. But say on different platforms it does make a difference. And like on Steam the data shows a median of 4 games per year. Then you look at the current pricing model for Game Pass. For a core it's $10 a month, standard is $15, and ultimate is $20. So if you break that down compared to the cost of Game Pass to the average amount of games you can actually buy per year, I made an amazing high-tech graph to showcase you what it looks like. So core dropping $120 a year, which is about 1.7 games at $70. Is not taking tax into consideration here. Standard being about 2.5 games a year, and ultimate being about 3.4 games a year. Now, of course, the big question with Game Pass is how does that money go towards the developers? And of course, there are multiple ways that can happen, but one of the ways that's actually mentioned here is saying that through a combination of upfront payments from Microsoft for adding their games into the service, engagement-based payouts depending on how many people play their game on the platform, and sometimes even a revenue share based on overall Game Pass subscriptions. So that Microsoft has their own like internal tracking how to do it. It's pretty complicated, but doing something so crazy like Game Pass can be a rather complicated new way to share revenue when it comes to these game studios. So I think it really kind of also shows that like, hey, like it's probably best to do like some kind of ongoing service kind of thing, which has been, I think, a really big concern with a lot of people. But we've seen that with Xbox, they are still invested with like single player games because they help push the game service forward. But with Xbox's recent huge push to be multi-platform, multi-device, that they're showcasing how they actually can affect the PlayStation sales quite a bit, right? Stated here in the same article saying, but if the game is multi-platform, it can be beneficial. That surge of players on Xbox can have a strong impact on sales on PlayStation, for instance. Now, some people read that as saying like strong impact as in a benefit to PlayStation, as in like you can get the game on Game Pass or you can own it on PlayStation. But I have a feeling I'm saying I have a huge surge of players on Xbox. This means a strong impact, as in very strongly impacting the sales of PlayStation to actually be less than what they would expect, which ultimately is Xbox's biggest competitor. Now, Game Pass does have its benefits, right? Where you can just jump in and try a game, right? And if you enjoy it, you can keep playing it. It's kind of how I felt with like Stalker 2. I mean, I was excited about it. I've never played a Stalker game, and I don't know if I would drop $70 to drop in and play it. Same thing maybe with Indiana Jones. But since it's on Game Pass, yeah, I'm going to jump in and play it. And I've been loving those games. So that's a huge benefit when it comes to this type of service. But it also mentions about how with indie games, right, smaller titles, AA, maybe even single A or single developer type games, that like you kind of have to be on Game Pass to even get noticed. Saying right here, saying try being an indie game on Xbox right now that's not on Game Pass. But also getting people to play your game in 2024 and 2025 is so hard. And subscriptions gets games in front of a lot of people. So again, big thing right there. Like it kind of forces smaller dev studios to be on Game Pass, right? that you would never really see them actually ever get like the opportunity to really get a lot of people to play it because it's part of the service, but then you kind of have to be part of the service to get the opportunity to even be played. Kind of a catch-22 kind of situation. But also with larger games on Game Pass, it does have the ability to affect smaller games as well in a beneficial way. Saying right here, we know from data that there are a lot of people who only play Call of Duty. And if there are some people dedicated to get Call of Duty this year via Game Pass, those very same people took the opportunity to play some other Game Pass games that wouldn't otherwise be played. So it's hard to argue that it's a bad thing. It also goes on to kind of state right here within the article, this is more from Video Games Chronicle, saying how like the physical sales have gone down quite a bit. I thought it was rather interesting saying physical sales have gone down nearly 35% in the UK just from last year, from year to year, which is just wild to think that much of a drop. Of course, 2023 was a pretty special year when it comes to games. Like there was so many like God I Plague type of games, but still like a 35% drop. That's quite big. But we do have actual hard evidence that Game Pass hasn't really hurt the sales, at least of one game in particular, that being Call of Duty, saying yes, Call of Duty Black Ops 6 was the best-selling video game in the United States in October and November of 2024. I mean, one is that, yeah, Black Ops 6 was a solid Call of Duty game. Like the campaign was fun. Multiplayer is good, just not really for me anymore. Of course, Warzone's been having its own issues right now, but the Zombies I've heard is also really great as well. I mean, it also broke records for Game Pass subscriptions. No surprise there for how popular Call of Duty is, even with Warzone being free. Like you can really just download it and play it whatever platform you want. You can be a Battle.net player, you can be a PlayStation player, but it still broke sales records right here with Game Pass subscriptions as well. So people made that jump over so they can play the multiplayer and play the campaign, play the zombies. Game Pass as a service I feel is really interesting to see how they do it. We've seen the other publishers follow suit with EA with their EA Play, Ubisoft with Ubisoft Plus, and an interesting turn of events, I guess is the way to put it. You can see here that Jim Ryan, the former CEO of PlayStation, did say that Game Pass on Xbox is value destructive back in 2023 of June. And then but then there's also PlayStation Plus now, so you can play any kind of premium title you want. It's basically their equivalent of Game Pass, which I just find kind of funny that like you would have like such a outgoing CEO, right, make a big statement like that, and then have PlayStation Plus as something you can do on PlayStation as well. So there has to be something there, right, with all these other publishers and platforms doing a similar game service subscription thing, kind of like Netflix but for games. So there has to be something there. I'm curious to see what the future has as a whole, because it's still rather new when it comes to the gaming industry as a whole, especially with Xbox's multi-platform philosophy when it comes to gaming, because they are a distant third console when it comes to amount of people playing on that platform, so they need to reach as many people as possible to stay relevant within the gaming industry. Overall, Game Pass is a pretty sweet deal. I buy into it so I can play these other games and play more games than I would actually if I was going to spend the money individually to buy these games, so I can be much more of a well-rounded gamer. If you made this far in the video, I hope you like, maybe even a subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.